when people have gray areas, particularly in matters of faith, they try to explain it away. Okay. And I believe that the more we have answers to those questions, the more or the less explaining away we have to do. Most of the things that people don't understand in scriptures, they try to just play the figurative card or say, oh, maybe that's metaphorical, or maybe that's just a parable. But too many, the more I've researched, the more I've seen that many and more things in scriptures are more literal than we think that they are figurative. So here are 25 words, okay, that were found in the Hebrew and also in the Yoruba. And the first five of them, you'll find them in Genesis 1. I wish this thing could show my cursor, but then either way, that should be fine. But then we could see what is going on there. So we've got Genesis 1:1. Now, Genesis 1:1 in the English KJV says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Okay, those are 10 words in the English language. But in the Hebrew, it's about 5 or 6 words. And it goes this way: Bereshit Elohim bara Shamaim et Eret. Those are 5 words. Now, about 4 or 5 of those words can be found literally directly in the Yoruba language. When Noah was born, he was born with a light skin, with a long hair, and with what the scripture calls beautiful eyes in that verse. And that they were so scared that they saw their children to be white skinned, and that begins to tell you maybe that's why that book of Enoch, amongst other things, didn't make that canonical scripture, as it were. So, and they said you look like it looks like the children of one of the fallen angels.
Kunle
Yes.
Ademeri. Kunle Minister.
Aderemi.
Aderemi. Aderemi.
Yes.
Sorry. What did I
So
say?
Dinano, did I?
Ademeri. Aderemi.
Yeah, but there's no Mary in it.
My apologies, sir.
No, that's okay.
Welcome to
So
something nice.
Dinano, did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, that's fine. It's they call it phonetics, right?
Oh.
I think so. A E I O
Mm-hmm.
U. That's phonetics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Dinano, that's what you can call me. Kunle.
Dinano.
Kunle is quite
Yes.
a common Nigerian name. First, let us
Yes.
welcome you to something nice with Dinano, and you, as a person who follows and
Mm-hmm.
watches and supports the channel, we also want to
Mm-hmm.
welcome you. Thank you very much for joining us. I must just let you know we are on our way to 100,000 subscribers, a significant milestone which we wouldn't have achieved without your support. So, from the bottom of my heart,
Mm-hmm.
and there's something nice with Dinano team, we really
Mm-hmm.
thank you as a supporter, viewer, subscriber to this channel. And our members, I will mention you by name so that you know how valuable you are to the channel. Today, we are hosting a Nigerian brother who's based in the heart of colonization in the UK, Kunle Ademeri. You reached out, Kunle.
Mm-hmm.
You said you wanted to speak about, I remember you mentioned the Yoruba people
Mm-hmm.
and their significance and their link to ancient Israel.
Mm-hmm.
You say you are Kunle ministers, not ministries.
Yes.
Tell us about
Ministers, yes.
Kunle ministers and what it seeks to achieve. Welcome again. Thank you for joining us.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Dinano. So Kunle Ministers is basically centered on spiritual edification and personal development. That's what we're about. And it started just about around 2019 up till date. But then specifically pinpointing to what brought about what I'm discussing, going to be discussing with you today, it started roughly about 5 to 6 years ago. That's when it picked up momentum. When I started thinking about why is Africa the way it is. I mean, the question on just about every African's mind, especially the younger generation, was asking why Africa is the way it is. Where was Africa when the rest of the world was making progress? So this led to a lot of questions and then some answers, and then those answers led to more questions, and we're here today.
What were some of those questions? Besides, why is Africa lagging? What are some of those questions? Are they based on the socio-economics? Are they based on human development? Are they based on civilization? Are they based in spirituality? What are they based on? These questions that kept coming up.
Yes, it's basically on the socio-economic situation of Africa as a continent and Nigeria, where I come from as a country. Because you wonder why the dark-skinned melanated people are always at the bottom of the socio-economic food chain, if you call it that, wherever they are, in diaspora, in whatever country. And surprisingly, when you come into their own country, they're still at the bottom of the food chain, and the other way around, when people from other continents, particularly Europe and other continents, when they are in their country, they're on the top, okay, where they should be, understandable. But when they come into Africa again, they're still at the top, and the African people are still at the bottom. So some say it's a curse, some say it's this. So it's something that I thought is worth my time and energy and resources to search about it. So yes, it's a mixture of all those things. Yeah.
And this journey towards searching and trying to find answers to these questions, how
Mhm.
far has it taken you? Tell us about the journey from where it started in seeking these answers to these questions and to where you
Mhm.
are right now.
Yes, it has really changed, basically changed my paradigm. It's been a paradigm shift for me. It's changed my worldview. Okay, and I used to think one of the most important things. I used to think it was some supernatural providence. Okay, that made it such that countries that have natural resources are poor, and then the countries that don't have natural resources are rich. But then it began to clear or demystify that situation to me when I started to research to see that it's not that mysterious as we think, because it began to make sense when I began to see that it is the countries that have the natural resources that are poor, and those that need those natural resources happen to be rich in whatever sense you want to put it. Then it began to make sense that okay, so maybe this is two sides of the same coin we're looking at. So it's been a paradigm shift for me, and as to be honest, it has helped me see how truly great the continent of Africa is. I mean, amongst other things. Yeah.
Have you found answers to these questions, Kunle?
Yes, absolutely. Most of them are found answers. Now, usually when we have questions, they lead to answers, and then the answers lead to more questions. But I think as a researcher, as long as we can keep changing our questions in that sense and we keep advancing our questions, I would say we're making progress. It's usually impossible or difficult to answer all questions and to eliminate questions altogether. But as long as we keep changing those questions and the questions are changing and we're answering our children's questions ahead and the questions our parents had, then I think we're making progress. But the questions have been answered, yes.
Let's talk about this issue of questions. And the
Mhm.
more information you find, the better the questions become, or the more
Mhm.
intricate or the deeper the questions become. Some people have this notion that when you learn, when you get more knowledge on something, you will become an expert, you will have answers to other people's questions. But it sounds like
Okay.
you're bringing another dynamic in the quest of seeking knowledge, that the more knowledge you acquire, maybe the better the questions you get on that topic.
Mhm.
Is that the case?
Yes, it's more of the better the questions. It's not like it gets you lost and worse than where you started off. That's not true. But then we have got questions that people have not even thought of. We have literally invented questions by these discoveries. For example, if I am telling you, which we'll get into in a minute, in a few moments from now, if I'm saying that the Africans, sub-Saharan Africans, the way they've called them, are the real people, the real Hebrews, and that's the real land of the Hebrews, then a new question is going to be, who then are the people in the Middle East? That's a new question generally, and it's a natural question that follows from that previous conclusion. So those are the kind of things that I mean by we come about new questions, which are relevant questions and that moves us forward. Yeah.
Here's something that usually comes up in this conversation. Well, people in
Mhm.
the comments usually bring this up. They say the Bible does not necessarily speak to the physical,
Okay.
it speaks to the spiritual.
Okay.
Meaning, if you want to talk about Israel,
Hmm.
if you want to talk about God's chosen people, it's not a matter of the flesh, it's not a matter of race, it's not a matter of ethnicity, it's a matter of spirituality. Christians go as far as saying, if you accept Christ, if you accept his gospel, if you live according to his ways, then you become a child of God. You become a chosen person. You become a child of Israel. Is that the case?
Yes, that is true in both ways. But what I've found about faith and life generally is that when people have gray areas, particularly in matters of faith, they try to explain it away. Okay. And I believe that the more we have answers to those questions, the more or the less explaining away we have to do. Most of the things that people don't understand in scriptures, they try to just play the figurative card or say, oh, maybe that's metaphorical, or maybe that's just a parable. But too many, the more I've researched, the more I've seen that many and more things in scriptures are more literal than we think that they are figurative, is what I've found out. So yes, it changes you spiritually because I would identify as a Christian in that sense myself. So it changes you when you know God. You may not need that ethnicity to know him. And that's one big, should I say, disclaimer or a call to action or a takeaway I want people to take from this interview. The knowledge of what I'm about to share is not going to redeem you in that sense. It's not going to make you a better person. You could use the knowledge to your own detriment, really. What will really change you is when you let God into your heart and you let Jesus into your heart and to change you. You see. But then the Bible has been there for thousands of years. There's hardly anything I want to share here that's not going to be in the scriptures already. Maybe just a few other facts from other books. But then knowledge in itself does not change. But then what really changes is encounter with the spirit that inspired those scriptures. So it's a little mix of both. But then to answer the question straight on, we're going to be bringing more things in a more literal perspective, so people can discard those other excuses they have tried to make to help God in explaining the scriptures. Many of them are literal, actually.
So, what's at the center of Kunle ministers?
Spiritual edification, personal development, of course, and as a Christian body, Christian group. Yes,
Okay, let's get into it. You've got a
great.
platform. We spoke about the chosen people of God. This is how I
Mhm,
termed it in my head.
mhm.
Someone is trying to call me. Let me just cut them off. This is how I termed it. Sorry for that. This is how I termed
No,
it
it's
in
okay.
my head. God's chosen people,
Mhm.
how their current state, how their current state links them to the ancient people of Israel, looking at their language, looking at their geographical location currently, and the locations in maps of olden days, ancient times. And those names are seemingly also similar to the names of the places mentioned in the Bible. And then the
Yeah.
last one, looking at their customs and their traditions and how
Mhm.
their current way of living points to what their ancestors who were living in the times of the Bible. Can we talk on
Yes.
those?
Yes, let's go. So I'm going to start with languages, like you have put them. So we can begin sharing screens now because I've popped something up that we can have a look at. So we look at languages, we look at the people and their cultures and the locations. Yeah, so we go to languages there. So because I speak the Yoruba language as my native language, my mother tongue, and it helps me to be able to bring up. We have been able to find up to 25. Let's have a count. About 26 words, still counting. Okay, in the Yoruba language that we also have in the Hebrew. Okay, and so just to have a feel of it, and then By the way, the Yoruba language is connected to the Kosa, the Ndebele, connected to Amharic, to the Ghanaian language. The African languages are generally connected. Sometimes they call them Bantu languages. So here are 25 words, okay, that were found in the Hebrew and also in the Yoruba. And the first five of them, you'll find them in Genesis 1. I wish this thing could show my cursor, but then either way, that should be fine. But then we could see what is going on there. So we've got Genesis 1 1. Now, Genesis 1 1 in the English KJV says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Okay, those are 10 words in the English language. But in the Hebrew, it's about 5 or 6 words. And it goes this way: Bereshit, Elohim, bara, Shamaim, et, eret. Those are 5 words. Now, about 4 or 5 of those words can be found literally directly in the Yoruba language. And the
Hold on,
first one is the word ber.
hold on. I don't want it to be a lecture. I want it to be a
Mhm,
conversation. As you are
mhm,
saying it in Hebrew, right?
mhm, mhm,
You are saying English uses about 10 words, Hebrew
mhm,
about 5 or 6.
mhm.
I want to take it to my Bantu language now, isiXhosa. Ekuqalekeni
Okay.
uThixo
Mhm,
wadala
mhm,
izulu
mhm,
nehlabathi. That's 5. Interesting.
mhm, mhm.
Okay.
Interesting. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. And
But but
Yoruba
but
has
but
just about five.
yeah. I the last one nehlabathi, the ne means and, so it could be 6 words. Ekuqalekeni uThixo wadala izulu
Mhm,
ne
mhm.
and hlabathi, the world.
Good. And that's Izulu. Is that the sky, the heavens?
Izulu, yeah, that's the sky.
Okay. Okay, fair enough. So let's, like you said, let's keep moving like that. So that's just one fair similarity there about the number of words. But we can take it one after the other. The modern Hebrew says Bereshit. In the Yoruba, you say Ni Bere. Okay. And we've put what is called the Hebrew Strong's number here. You can literally type this number on the internet. Just type H7225 on the internet. It's going to pop this up to you.
Let's
So
see.
Ni Bere.
Hold on, hold on. Let's we're teaching people here. H7 two two
225.
five, and then I say enter.
Yes, I could try it on my end also if that helps you.
H7225.
Mhm.
Strong's Hebrew Lexicon. That's what it says.
Great.
King James
Good.
Bible
So,
Dictionary, Strong's number H7225. That's the result it's giving me.
yes. Yes. And does it tell you what that word is? It's going to tell you Bereshit or in the beginning.
It makes, I'm trying to, yeah, Reshit. That's what it's written here.
Yeah. So that's it. So now, that is just to help people pop up. Is our screen still okay? What I'm seeing here is a little.
I don't know what you are sharing now. It looks
Hmm.
like you're sharing a lot of things there. Fix it on your end. It's fine.
But what I've got here is
That's it.
okay. Can you see the screen? What can you see there? Okay. Let's see.
I can see now. I can see your Excel sheet. Now you've left the Excel sheet.
Okay, good. We're back.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've put those numbers on this right so people can easily look it up and they can find it there. So Bereshit, we have Ni Bere. Eloha is the word for God. That's where you have Elohim. Okay, but the singular is Eloha. In Yoruba, you say Oluwa. Here you have Shama, which is heaven. In Yoruba, you say Soma.
Mhm.
Okay. The and is et. On your side, it is en. Here it is et in Hebrew. In
Mhm.
Yoruba, it is ati. So et ati.
Okay.
It is eret in Hebrew. In Yoruba, you say ere, and that is for a wetland. And of course, it makes sense when God asked the water to come over to one side. Okay, what you're going to have is some wetland for a while before it dries up. That kind of wetland in Yoruba is called ere.
Mhm.
Okay, so you have enos. Now we've gone a little bit past Genesis 1 1. So enos is a word for person in Hebrew. In Yoruba, you say enion. You have okele. You literally have the same thing, okele, which is what you use for solid meals in Yoruba. You have Abba. This is in many languages. You have Baba in Yoruba, and in maybe closer also. But many languages have that. Ima is mama. Malak is angel. In Yoruba, you say Malaika.
Yeah.
Also in Hausa and some other languages. So you say ba or bo in Hebrew. In Yoruba, you say bo. It means to arrive.
Mm-hmm.
So kabo means the time of coming. And these are the scriptures you can easily pull out those words.
Yeah.
In Yoruba, you say kabo, it means welcome. Lago is the modern Hebrew for to dwell. In Yoruba, you say lugo, which means to stay or to lurk. Oshe or ashe, you might have heard that before. That means to do, or he made, or he did, or he do. Yoruba, you say Oshe. Ra means bad in Hebrew. Ra means rotten in Yoruba. Rabrabata means great or big. You say rabata in Yoruba. Big is gado. You say gidigbo in Yoruba. Ani means I. In Yoruba, you say emi. Batal is onion. You say alubosa. Ruwa is noise. You say ariwo in Yoruba. Nabi. By the way, this Nabi is interesting because when you say Nubia, Nubia, by the way, is the people in the southern part of Egypt, okay? And you
Mm-hmm.
call them Nubia. Yes. But then when you break down that word, it's like saying Nubi and Yah. Yah is the name of God. I'm sure you've heard that
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
get hallelujah, yes. And Nubi means prophet. So when you say Nubia, it's as good as you're saying the prophet of God, you see. But in Yoruba, you say Anobi, also in Hausa.
Mm.
So Beraka is for blessing. Yoruba, you say alubarika. You say ekad in Hebrew for one. In Yoruba, you say okon,
Mm-hmm.
okon, ekad. C is roe or ray. Yoruba, you say ri, means to see. Baal is Lord in Hebrew. In Yoruba, you say Baale, which means chief of the land or chief of the house.
Okay.
So Perez is means to break. In Yoruba, you say pere pere. It's like an adjective to mean you turn something in pieces. So this is 26 words and still counting. So, and I'm sure if we extend this table to Amharic, to Kosa, Indebele, to all those languages, I mean, we can literally see. But to make it simple and things I'm very 100% sure of, I just picked the Yoruba language, and that is connected to other African languages like that. So that's one strong thing we've got for languages right there.
Okay. No, this is interesting because I've heard a couple of people come through on the platform who also link the languages of the Bantu people or the sub-Saharan people to ancient Hebrew. Vedron, he's done intensive research on the language aspect of the Bantu people and how it links to Hebrew. I've heard Sir Amadiel, who is based in Israel in South Africa, the land that is known as Israel currently,
Okay,
which
okay,
I have a feeling you might have an issue with. He
okay.
also
So
made
there's a place. Sorry,
reference.
sorry to
Yeah?
cut you short. There's a place called Israel in South Africa. You mean?
No, 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 no.
Oh, Middle East Israel. You mean?
The Middle East Israel.
Okay, no, that's fine. Okay, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Okay. He made reference to a word that was used in Hebrew that's similar to a word that is used in isiXhosa or isinguni. Isinguni would be isiZulu, isindebele, isiXhosa, and isiswati. Those are all
Okay,
Southern African languages. He made mention of this word ukan, something along those lines, which means they are here. NgesiXhosa, we
okay,
say ukona. So there's similarities.
okay.
All these people speak
Mhm,
on the similarities in the language between languages that are currently spoken in sub-Saharan Africa
mhm.
and ancient Hebrew. You've also come up with that. Are there
Yeah.
any other things that show in the language besides the 26 words that you have personally come up with? Are there any other things that link us in terms of the language, or maybe not us, but people of West Africa, the Yoruba in this particular
Mhm,
context, to
mhm.
ancient Hebrew language or lexicon?
Yeah, there is that's just about all. Most of the other things would already be taking us to the next stage, which is the people themselves and their cultures, because there are some words that they say in the culture that would link us to the ancient Hebrew, as it were. But then it's not so particular to Yoruba. The most you hear about Yoruba is just in these languages. And like I said, the reason why I've picked that is because that is the language I am 100% sure of the words and their meanings. So, and in fact, when you check that table, you're going to see some other words, some Amharic, some words like that there. So it's not just the Yoruba people. I believe it really extends to the south, really, of the continent.
Now let's talk about these customs.
Yes,
A lot of people say they always mention circumcision. And
yes,
interestingly enough, we haven't had a serious look at the links between West Africa and ancient Hebrew people. Most of these guys usually make reference to the sub Saharan people in the southern parts, the Bantu. But I remember I had an interview with Bishop Nathaniel. He was
okay,
looking at maps from the 16th century, which is the 1700s, which were
yes,
looking at places in West Africa up to the coast of the Atlantic Ocean, where some of these places had similar names to names in the Bible. But now, customs, the one thing that they usually mention is circumcision. What other
yes.
customs can you mention that are seen in current people of West Africa and ancient people of the Bible?
Yes, I believe it extends, like I said, to Southern Africa. But by the way, is there circumcision is practiced in Southern Africa, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes, exactly. So it's not just West Africa, but it's, to be honest, it's quite concentrated there. But yes, circumcision is one. The next one will be the payment of bride price.
Hold on the circumcision. There's something
Mhm.
different with us here. We do it as young men, but in the Bible,
Okay.
the reference is at 8 days. And I think some tribes in West Africa also do it that early. Maybe you want to talk on
Yes. Okay, fine. Let me just stick with West Africa then in this case. So yes, it's exactly on the eighth day that is done in the West African cultures, in the Igbo, in the Yoruba, and part of the Hausa. So the Igbo and Yoruba is the southern part of Nigeria, south, west, and south of Nigeria, and then the east of Nigeria into Cameroon. Okay, and then some parts of the north, because that part that is the Sahel all through Africa like that is a very important line, and we'll talk about that when we get into locations. That is where the Ur of the Chaldees happen to fall into, where Abraham descended from. So, where we've got circumcision. And by the way, if you want to copy people's culture, like I usually tell people, you can copy people's sagging when they put down their trousers. You can copy putting an earring. Those are not. But then when you talk about cutting off the foreskin of an 8-year-old, that's not something you just want to copy. It's got to be something that is deep rooted. So it's not something, definitely not something that was copied from the West or from colonizers or even from missionaries. No, absolutely not. So that's that about circumcision. So, and it's on the eighth day also, by the way, in the Yoruba culture, particularly that I know of. So then the payment of bride price is not something we see in Europe, okay,
Hold on,
as
hold
such.
on. Before we go to
Mhm,
the other ones, I like exploring
mhm,
this circumcision thing because it's a
mhm,
rite of passage that I went through as a Xhosa man, right? But as
mhm,
I'm saying, ours is at about the age of 16. And we
mhm.
somehow link it to Esxhoseni, a guy called Somakwaza. I don't know how true that is because when I heard that story when I was there, I thought it was absolute nonsense because everyone has a different way of explaining how Somakwaza came to be a man or how he became circumcised. Because I just didn't buy that story. But I want to find out in the other tribes of Africa, do you have a background of how the Yoruba, the Igbo got to be circumcised? Someone did mention something about the Ashanti people also practicing some of these customs. I don't know if you know. Ashanti are mainly from Ghana, right? That's also West Africa.
Yes.
What's the history behind this circumcision?
For me, I do not know any history. We just do it. I was not able to get anything from my parents or even from research. Though I've not searched, but I don't have anything with regards to that. We just do it. And in fact, the more you don't have an explanation for something, probably the deeper it is in the culture. They just do it without thinking. That is to show how deep rooted it is. I mean, in my opinion. So we don't have that. But then in Kenya, for example, there is a Kikuyu people. And if I'm right, yes, there's a Kikuyu people in Kenya. And from what I've gathered, if you tell a Kikuyu man, if I'm not getting that name right, someone could correct me in
Kikuyu
the
or
comments or
Gikuyu?
something.
It's correct. Kikuyu
Kiku.
or
Okay.
Gikuyu. What,
I think it's K.
yeah, it's K.
Good.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, great, great. So I've heard that if you were to tell a Kikuyu man, maybe a more local man, maybe not the educated ones in that sense. That hey, you're the uncircumcised. It could literally punch you in the face for saying that. I mean, if
Same with Xhosa people.
exactly,
So it goes as
I mean, if it,
yeah, sorry.
yeah, yeah, I mean, if it would take him to pull down his trousers or something to prove to you that you crazy, what are you talking about?
That's
You
exactly
understand?
what is in my culture, Kunle. In
Exactly.
Xhosa, if you are not circumcised, you are literally a boy. And calling a man a
Wow.
boy is utmost
Wow.
disrespect, right? In any
Yes.
culture.
Really, yes, exactly. So something that deep seated into the culture is not something they just borrowed somewhere along the line. No, it's got to be something really rooted, and it's not a religious thing, by the way. I mean, irrespective, they are Muslim Nigerians, Christian Yoruba, they just do it. So it's more of a cultural thing than spiritual, yeah, or religious. Yeah. So paying of bride price. Um, Let me go to Olauda Equiano. There's a young man whose name is Olauda Equiano. Okay. And I could just pop that up if that would help. Or if not, we could just keep talking. So he was taken, basically kidnapped as a slave, but then he was saved, interestingly, by an Englishman or someone from Europe like that. So then they took them to Sierra Leone and things like that. So I think anyway, long story short, he wrote a story about his people. I mean, if the screen is going to allow us show that, we could just type Olauda Equiano. So that's it, a writer. There we go. Boom. So the title of the book is The Interesting Narrative of the Life of Olauda Equiano. So it's more of an autobiography. Now, he's an Igbo man, by the way, which is Eastern Nigeria. So he was not trying to prove in the story, his goal was not to try to prove that he's a Hebrew. That's not the idea of the story. The story is just to tell about his life, okay? But in the process of it, he mentioned something called purifications that happen when his mother used to menstruate, of course. I can imagine he was one of the early children, but he was so fond of his mother. But there is this way they put the parent, the women, in a special um, place while they are menstruating. They give them a different kind of apartment, so to speak, to stay until they're done with the menstruation. So, and in fact, he said he could remember clearly because um, he is so fond of his mother and he would want to play with his mom and things like that. So they would have him stay there with his mom until she is done with the purification and they both can come back, to the main house. In my mind, I just call it free Airbnb. I mean, those are the kind of days you wish you can menstruate also, so they will give you a free apartment to stay, on a lighter note. But then that was how, and that is exactly what you find in Leviticus 18. That is not a religious thing and all of that. So that's that about purifications. Then also the worship of elders. I call it worship, even though we call it greeting. But then in Yoruba land, if you want to greet your parents as a lady, you both of your knees go on the ground. You kneel to greet them. And as a young man, if you want to greet your parents, you prostrate on the floor and literally like your nose is on the ground, you're flat on the floor. And I do not know any other posture that can describe worship better than that, in my opinion. So that's worship and reverence. Yeah.
Let's talk about this issue of worship.
Hmm.
I had an episode with my father. He came to visit us
Mm,
from
mm,
wherever he stays to where we are. And I managed to spend some time with him. I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, but I managed to spend
mm.
some time with him and just sit down. I like arguing with him. That's how we connect. We argue a
Okay.
lot. But for some reason, this day, he was telling me about a powerful South African author. The guy's name is S.E.K. Mkai. By the way,
Okay.
a great Kikuyu person almost
Mhm.
worships S.E.K. Mkai. This Kikuyu person is Ngugi wa Thiong'o, famous African
Okay.
author. Anyway, so I'm
Mm,
sitting here, I'm listening to this man.
mm.
I don't know how this is going to make a lot of people feel, believers, Christians, but as I was listening to him, I'm like, this man is my God.
Mm,
And I just said, I thought, for once, let me not argue with him. Let me just take in whatever it is that he's bringing forth.
mhm.
I don't know if it's maturity on
Wow.
my side or it was a spiritual thing on my side, but I got moved when you use the word worship. for our elders.
Hmm.
Because worship
Hmm.
is sort of like an ordinance or something that is exclusive for God. But
Hmm.
now I'm thinking of a scripture in the Bible that says, honor thy mother and thy father. That could be translated
Yeah.
any other way, right? But it means
Hmm. Hmm.
utter reverence and
Hmm.
respect for these people. Carry
Yeah.
on. It just brought that thought in my mind.
Yeah, I know. I know. That's wonderful. And that's very true. I mean, it's very close to worship when you literally prostrate to greet your parents. It's something else. And then that would almost naturally extend to the ones that have passed on. Now in the Yoruba culture, we would not they would not necessarily worship them in that sense, almost going into necromancy. But then you see, I mean, people say the God of who? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I mean, what? That's as good as mentioning the past, ancestors and things like that. So that's that about respect or worship for elders. And then the way the sacrifices are made, the killing of the chicken, killing of the goats, the way their priesthood is done. Okay, even though of course a lot of it would have lost meaning and all that, and a lot would deviate into idolatry as we know it. In fact, which was literally happening in the Bible days when the northern kingdom would set up their own altar different from the southern kingdom, and they would put whoever they want in their priesthood. But it was just a kind of adulteration of the real thing. And maybe the last one I want to mention with regards to culture is what they call there's the culture in Ghana where they paint the post, the lintel. Okay, I wish I can remember the name of that tradition now. They
Passover
paint.
in the
Yes,
Bible,
it's
right?
Passover. Yes, in the Bible it's Passover, but in Ghanaian culture, there's still a name for it, which I probably will remember as we go on. So they paint it with the red mud because their ground is a little reddish in that part of Ghana, and they paint the posts with a red mud. And then a young man is a rabbi now, but basically he's Ghanaian, and I think it's a Shante or something that he's come from. He's saying that is come from that same thing that is written in scriptures of them to paint their lintel with the blood of the lamb because they could not afford to buy lambs, and so then it transitioned into using the red mud on the ground to just paint the lintel. So it's not a religious thing, it's a natural traditional thing that they do, and it's come literally from there. So there are many things like that here.
There are very interesting customs in West Africa, man. I'm gonna
Mm,
mention another one from Ghana. Well, I've heard it's
mm,
from Ghana. You'll correct me if
mm,
I'm wrong. I know you're Nigerian. Maybe you might have linkage or know
mm,
some things about Ghana. Do you know of
mm.
the name that's usually given to children? Kwame.
Oh, Kwame Nkrumah. Yeah, tell me. I think I've researched
Okay.
something about Ghanaian names. Yeah.
So I don't know how we came across this name.
Mm,
Obviously, there's Kwame Nkrumah, who's the father of Pan Africanism. They call him, right? Ghanaian president,
mm, mm,
activist, politician. But
yeah.
my niece, a girl is a niece, right?
Mm,
She was given this
yes.
name. We
Mm,
somehow found out that no, it's a name given to boys who are born on the
mm.
Sabbath or the seventh day of the week.
Yes, exactly.
So
Yes, exactly what I researched.
she was born on the Sabbath on
Mm.
Saturday in our modern calendar. Some people will argue it's not. But they gave her that name only to find out later that no, it's actually a name given to boys. So there's a lot of linkages between what our African people know as
Mhm.
things of God. By the way, I think the meaning means born on the day of the Lord, Kwame.
Wow. Mm. Yes, I've heard that. It's as good as calling them that. I've searched that before, and I remember seeing that Kwame is the name given to them on Sabbath. Yes. Mm. That's wonderful. So that's one of those things. And regarding the people also, well, still in the section of people, because the way we have sectioned this research on our website is languages, peoples and cultures, locations, and then we went to timelines. So still around peoples and cultures, um, the Hebrew people are dark skinned. In fact, there is literally a book that says when the world was black. There's a book titled like that. That is to me, there was a time when everybody was black. And then when you check the book of Enoch, verse 105, which you can pop up now if you need it. When Noah was born, he was born with a light skin, with a long hair, and with what the scripture calls beautiful eyes in that verse. And that they were so scared that they saw their children to be white skinned, and that begins to tell you maybe that's why that book of Enoch, amongst other things, didn't make that canonical scripture, as it were. So, and they said you look like it looks like the children of one of the fallen angels. You see, that is to say that to be white skinned as a Hebrew, in fact, as a human altogether, sorry to say, was a very strange thing in their times. Another thing about Moses, when God wanted to speak to him, I believe in the second chapter of Exodus, he told him to put his hand into his bosom, and he said that his hand became leprous. Now, the definition of leprosy is not that fungal or bacterial thing that happens to them when they lose the fingers. That is not the real meaning of leprosy in the Hebrew tongue. And in fact, still in the Igbo till today, when you say leprosy, it meant that you lose your skin pigmentation, which is vitiligo. Okay. So when it says leprosy in scripture, in fact, you would imagine Naaman, who was a captain of the host, had leprosy. There was no practical way he would be able to fight battles if he had lost his fingers, you see. So leprosy is a term for vitiligo, which is the loss of skin pigmentation, which I can pop up here if that is still showing in your screen right there. So in case for those that don't know what vitiligo might be, so vitiligo, so it's just a skin condition. So it does not have any major symptoms or things like that. Put that on a fresh page. So I'm sure probably, yeah. So that's what vitiligo is. So if the darker you are, the more obvious vitiligo is, which is what leprosy really is, you see. So, but if you're a light skinned person, you cannot really have vitiligo technically. Like this lady, to the left, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but that's yeah, I hope, yeah, that's the mouse. Yeah, so this person, if she has vitiligo, I mean, it's either impossible for her to have it, or maybe, I mean, it's just going to be very, very, you can't see it, you can't tell. But vitiligo is the loss of skin pigmentation and part of the hair also. So the thing comes to attack the melanin, so to speak, is what it is. And you can imagine how it may feel, uncomfortable when someone just pops up in your face and they look like this, part of their nose is patched, or so it's something that can affect people's beauty. So they are put on the outside of the can. But long story short, that's what vitiligo is. Okay, so the people are dark skinned, and that's just what it is. So that's that about the cultures and the people.
Let's move to the other part now, which is a very
Yes. Yes. Controversial.
controversial and highly disputed. I remember we hosted a sister who's also delving into the research on ancient Israel being in Africa.
Hmm.
People on the comments were just complaining. Tyranny Cherie is her name.
Okay.
People were just complaining, saying, "Hey, man, you can't say that Euphrates is in West Africa, or one of the rivers that's mentioned there, of the four rivers in Eden, is the Blue Nile, because back then, before the flood, the world was one solid mass, land mass, and
Yes.
then after the flood,
Okay.
the continents were created or were shifted around."
Okay.
Do you have compelling evidence that will convince
Yes.
even the doubters that no, the place that is currently known as Israel today in the Middle East, as you call it, some people even make fun of the term. What does that even mean? Is actually
Hmm.
not Israel. Israel is here in sub Saharan Africa or West Africa. I don't know what you're going to come up with, because it
I
seems
know.
like everyone comes up with their own location to suit
Yeah.
their tribe being the chosen people.